Let's get started. It's 1 o'clock. It's my privilege and pleasure to introduce my good friend, a man I look up to as my coach, Gary Ryan Blair. Gary is the author of the best-selling book, Everything Counts, among many others. His online course called the 100-Day Challenge has had more than over 600,000 people have taken that course. It's something I do myself every year. Gary, I want to start with this. We are now 6 days into the third quarter of the year. That means half the year is behind us. And for people who are like me, who are not where we wanted to be on July 1st, halfway into the year for our goals of the year, what would you tell us to do?
Well, you know, in your copy that you sent out, you talked about starting fast and finishing strong. So I can't forget that. Joe, let's start with the start fast component of it. The fact is, everything that we do has a 3 steps to it. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. You know, there may be some follow-up, but fundamentally everything works that way. And that's true of every day. So if you look at it from that standpoint, you have to sit back and say to yourself, what's the best way for me to start my day if you want to be productive and truly, really knock it out of the park in the third quarter? Well, it comes down to, you know, you want to start fast, you want to be focused, you want to do, in some way, shape, or form, you want to come out of the gate creating some momentum. But here's the best way to look at it. You know, I've done strategic planning for many, many years now. And I think people sometimes get confused because they start to write up all these corporate values and these things that are important. And I'm not negating any of that, but I think I have a better way of doing it. I like to call this exercise own your adjectives. And when you own your adjectives, essentially what you're sitting back and saying to yourself is, what are the adjectives that I want to champion? That when people hear my name or watch me work, that I exemplify these attributes is really what it comes down to. So for me, you know, you want it to be fast, you want it to be consistent, you want it to be focused, you want it to be deliberate, whatever words you want to use, what it comes down to. But the reality is, some people start their day off slow. Some people start their days off unfocused, without a plan, and they take forever to build momentum if they build it at all. So my advice is take ownership of your morning and decide what those adjectives are going to be. Model them, because behavior truly never lies, and that gives it gives everybody within earshot and eyeshot, if you will, a good understanding as to what you value, what your priorities are from a behavioral standpoint.
You know, speaking of starting mornings, there are really 2 conflicting theories about that. You know, Brian Tracy, who you know wrote the book Eat That Frog, which means take your biggest, hardest project. But other people say, start with the easy things, start to build up that momentum. What's your advice to people on that?
Yeah, I'm on the opposite side of the camp of Brian. And it's not that there's anything wrong, there's just different viewpoints. But here's my take on it. I remember years ago, I was down at the YMCA, they've got that triangle. And they say that we build strong bodies, strong minds, and strong families. That's their creed, is what that whole thing is all about. I never really forgot that. And my mind is always awake, and I'm trying to connect the dots, no matter where how seemingly unconnected they may be. Well, for me, when you look at that, I believe in the component of you want wins, you want personal wins. Now, we've all heard the term random acts of kindness. My advice to everybody is to have selfish acts of kindness. These are things that you do for yourself, by yourself, to build your mind, your body, your spirit, your family, your income, or whatever the case might be. And you want to be able to do things that you work out in the morning. You exercise in the morning, you read in the morning, you do your prayer or meditation, whatever it is you go through, whatever exercises. But fundamentally, what you're doing is you're making deposits into your life so that you are filled and fulfilled, if you will, intellectually, physically, mentally, spiritually, financially, whatever it is happens to be. And by doing that, you build momentum right out of the gate. But I don't think it needs to be a lot of big things, because quite frankly, you can lose a lot of sleep the night before. You know you've got a big elephant to eat in the morning. But I think if you attack it from the standpoint, you know what, I'm going to gobble up and I'm going to grab some low-hanging fruit first thing in the morning and to build some momentum and natural endorphins, I can't see anything wrong with that approach. And that's what I've been doing for years.
Well, one of the things I do is the night before I go to bed, I'll write my own horoscope. I call it a horoscope. And it's not a to-do list. It's really, what do I want my day to be like? And sometimes I often have the words, from out of the blue comes a phone call that you've been, haven't been expecting, an old friend, a business lead. And it's amazing how often things come from out of the blue because I'm expecting them and, mentally prepared for them. So one of the things that you've written about quite recently is the Bullseye Strategy. I just saw that from you, I think, yesterday. Can you say a little more about what that is?
Yeah, let me start by throwing a question out at you. Did you read the book or know anything about the boys in the boat?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Do you remember the storyline that they talked about in there, that how all of a sudden the American Olympic team wind up winning the first gold that they ever won? They basically, what they came down to is, obviously they were always in a losing position and they wanted to make this different. So and I'm going to fast track this whole story. By the way, it's a great book, but it's about, I don't know, 400 or 500 pages to read. But their fundamental theory was, will it make the boat go faster? That every single decision that was made was based against that question, one question. And the weight of the team, the clothing, equipment, everything was measured against that. And that's essentially was the driver. Okay, the bullseye strategy is very simple. We all know what a bullseye looks like. So you identify what the target is, and then you basically frame one question around that. Now, before I give you the answer, let me just set it up a little bit more. My belief is that everything counts, as you know, and everything takes you towards or away from your goals. There's no east or west, there's just north or south. You're going closer to or further from. It's the way it goes. So in this case, when you take this bullseye strategy, you identify exactly what it is that you want, what target you want to hit. You base every decision against that goal. So if the goal is, let's just say to increase sales by 35% in this specific sales quarter, third quarter of the year. Well, no matter what comes up, fundamentally, you and everyone on your team ask the question, will it help us to achieve this goal faster? If the end goal fundamentally is, how do you accelerate your success and get to the finish line quicker? You need some kind of a qualifier. And that one simple, straightforward question, if you ask that and your answer is always yes, then you continue to move forward and take aggressive action. If the answer is no, then you need to come back, re-strategize, and make sure that you make a decision or take an action that moves you towards that target. It's that simple.
How many times in a day would somebody stop and ask that question? Is that a one time a day, or is that every half hour? Am I moving north or south?
Joe, it's a moment by moment type thing. Yeah, it needs to be a qualifier. I remember years ago, signs I used to hang in the office, is this the best use of my time and all of that type of stuff. But you really do. And here's the beautiful part about it. Simplicity is the key. We make things much more difficult than they need to be. So let's take the bullseye and extend it a little bit further. I talk a little bit about winning streaks, and it's an entirely different way of looking at goals. So when my kids were younger, I don't allow them on social media all that much, but when they were a little bit younger, they started on Snapchat, and it's since they've gotten away from that. But Snap basically used to have these things called streaks. And what the kids did was they wanted to communicate with a few friends of theirs, and they needed to keep their streak alive. So every day they needed to send a picture, video, whatever the case might be. And some of them were up to a couple of 100 days. Okay. Well, as it relates to performance, what everyone needs to do is realize is that, we exist to win. We exist to put points on the board. The reason why you are hired essentially is to produce some type of a result, to deliver an outcome, and to do it consistently. That's just the way that it works. There's nothing wrong with that. That being the case, what you want to do is sit back and realize, okay, is this really taking you towards your way? But the idea of the winning streak is you want to make sure that you get a win each and every day. And if you do that, and you keep that winning streak alive, whether it's a sale a day or a close a day or some type of an action that you engage in each day, it's the same way that Jerry Seinfeld wrote jokes. Every single day, and Stephen King has done this as well. Stephen King has written every day for 42 years. Every day. That's birthdays, holidays, anniversaries, you name it, it gets done. Jerry Seinfeld writes some kind of a joke on yellow legal pad, long way, and I still work that way as well. Every single day. And he said, the only way to improve your task is to keep at it each day. It's simple, it's straightforward, it just requires commitment and consistency.
I remember hearing a very successful writer once, and he said, I write every day and I don't care if it's good or not. And when the book is done, I'll go back and reread it. And I can't remember the parts that I thought were really great and really terrible. But it's that I got my work done.
Yeah.
And I got on that roll. You mentioned the book, The Boys in the Boat, and there's something else I want to ask you about. They competed in the boat race and the sculling in the 1936 Olympics. And part of their motivation was beating Nazi Germany. They had this bigger goal. How does that relate to the Bullseye strategy? Not just getting something done for the day, but having a bigger why that you're working for.
Sure. Listen, if you go back and you look at even Kennedy, when he first introduced the idea of us going to the moon and returning home safely, what every good leader does, they introduce an enemy, they introduce an adversary, they introduce some type of resistance or tension. In this case, they introduced the Russians. And they said, we need to get there before they do. So it was a race to get to the moon. What you'll find is that the competitive model, in my opinion, is the single best model. It's the same way looking at a horse race. A horse will never run as fast on its own than when there's another horse by its side or behind it, pushing it to go faster. And right now we're experiencing the NBA finals are going on. If you want to see some great basketball, these guys are all wealthy. They're all millionaires. They got plenty of rings and cars and all the good stuff. They want that ring and what it symbolizes. And you're going to see performance that the competitor brings out in them in order to capture that prize is really what it's all about.
For many of us, we may be nurses or middle managers or somebody running their own business. They really don't have an identified competitor like another team or another country. How would you recommend that somebody like that establish that spirit of competition in their own performance?
That's easy. You compete against yourself, or you compete against last quarter's performance or the best performance of another hospital. There's a lot of ways to go about it. I just think it comes down to being creative. It really does. But you need some kind of a bar. I mean, whether people are a fan of Tiger Woods or not, when he was a young kid, he used to have Jack Nicklaus's scores up on his, like on a poster in his bedroom, when he looked at those things, just kind of the way that they were. And it provides you, with some juice. It provides you with focus, but more importantly, it gives you a reason to stay in the game and stay hungry.
In the movie Top Gun, there's a great line where Maverick says, I feel the need for speed. I don't know of anybody who talks about speed more than you do. Say a little more about your success loves speed philosophy and how to achieve that when you're having a slow day.
Absolutely. Well, let me preface it by saying it's not a matter of running around, like Wile E. Coyote with your hair on fire. That's not what I'm talking about. But here, to understand it correctly, everyone needs to understand that there's only two forms of strategy. There's offense and defense. Offense, you're taking action. Offense, you're demonstrating initiative. Offense is you're taking the necessary steps to advance the ball towards your target. Defense does just the opposite. This is procrastination, indecision, uncertainty, lack of commitment, or being unmotivated, or whatever the case might be. Those take you away from your goals. That's pretty much the way that works. But if you know what you want, why you want it, the deadlines and the rewards and everything involved around it, you will be taking steps that naturally move you forward. You won't be doing things the second time because you're committed to excellence. You won't be vacillating back and forth, should I or shouldn't I? You've already determined that this is a correct course of action, and you're going to be confidently moving in the direction of your dreams. The net result of working efficiently and with clarity is speed. That's the beautiful part about it. It really does. And the thing we need to understand is that success loves speed. And let me give everybody a few things. People say that there's no shortcuts to success. And I have a hard time with this one because I do believe that there are. I'm going to give a few of them to you right now. Joe, you travel quite a bit. You have one of those passes when you go through the airport. How much did it cost you?
$80.
Good enough. So you paid for speed. So you paid for a shortcut. Fair enough. When you go to Disney, you've been there, I've been there. I pay for the fast pass. It's about $100 or so per person. We're paying for a shortcut. We accelerate, we remove the line out of the equation. You get on Easy Pass on the highway, you pay, I don't know, whatever monthly fee that is, bang. Federal Express, the entire business model was based on speed. People paid for speed. I've always told every entrepreneur that you should have some type of a speed lane or use some type of a speedy service that people would pay a premium for because they want it, they really do. Okay, so the idea being behind Success Loves Speed is that truly people want things faster. I mean, whether you go into a Starbucks or you go into any type of situation, they want an outcome. They want it quickly. They don't want to hear excuses of belly making or anything else. And I think the sooner people wake up and realize that speed is not just a want, it's a necessity. It really is. It's a necessity. And I think it's to a very large extent, it's the bare minimum in order to stay competitive in today's marketplace. It really is.
So here's something I'm really concerned about. We're coming out of almost 2 years of COVID. Even before COVID, we're reading about people being burned out. Now we're reading about people who have, COVID brain syndrome, levels of depression are higher. What do you say to somebody who says, man, I'm just depressed, or, I've been home for 18 months now. I don't know how to get back up to the speed I used to have. What do you say to someone who is stuck because their excuse is COVID?
Yeah, I get that question all the time. And I think I probably have just the right answer for it. So here's the deal. There's a TV show, it's called Billions. Familiar with it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Wendy Rhodes, she plays the office shrink. Her job is to get everybody tuned up, get their head straight, get back in the game. These are obviously all Wall Street brokers. And she does her job amazingly well. Essentially what she manages everybody's psychology. Well, the reality is we all need to manage our own psychology. That's it. We need to understand the principle of mind control and work it for us rather than allow it to be worked against us. So one of the first things we do is we have to control our intakes. What are the conversations? What are the things we're listening to? What are the things we're reading? Because all of these, whatever you're exposing your mind to, you get attracted to, and it's either going to sap you of energy or it's going to provide you with energy. Unfortunately, a lot of it is negative, a lot of it's propaganda, and a lot of it it's like a battery that just constantly gets its battery drained. So you have to sit back and say to yourself, how do you charge that battery? Okay. For me, it's a very simple question. You have to ask yourself, this is like one of the strangest questions you'll hear all day. But what is the utilitarian value of a belief system? Why does a belief system exist? And a belief system does not exist to make you feel depressed, stressed out, anxiety-driven, low self-esteem. That's not the purpose of your belief system. And your belief system is corrupted if you're experiencing any of those things. So number one, the first thing is your beliefs have to produce consistently positive results. Number one, that's a qualifier. So that's a very simple yes or no. Do they or don't they? Number two, they have to make you feel safe and secure, meaning that you want to be able to build your self-esteem. You feel secure within your own skin and all of that type of stuff. Okay. And most importantly, do they unleash your full potential? If your belief system does not fit that 3-point plan, something is corrupted. And the only person who can fix that is you. But I promise you, it always begins with your input. So either turn the stuff off or find something else to tune into. But I would venture to say right now, all of us are overloaded as it relates towards inputs. So I'd advise probably a very strict diet away from a lot of this stuff.
We do, with the hospitals, mostly hospitals we work with, we do a culture assessment survey. And one of the questions, and we've had thousands of people respond to this, is what % of all paid hours in your organization get wasted on toxic emotional negativity, complaining, rumor mongering, et cetera? On average, it's about 15%. What do you say to somebody who says, I'm trying to control my intakes, but there's so much negativity around me, it just drags me down by the end of my shift? Yeah. How do they protect themselves?
Was that a 5-0 or 15? 1-5?
1-5.
Okay, all right, good.
15%. The average organization is paying people hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to bitch, moan, whine, and complain per year.
I get it. Well, listen, if you're working within a team environment, I think everybody needs to get, my advice would be this, is get everybody together as a team and have a discussion and have some type of ground rules. This is what we're going to tolerate or not tolerate for this reason, okay? What you put up with, you end up with. And if you don't immediately remove or extract, that bad cancer, if you will, out of the conversation, out of the environment, out of the team or off the floor, it will continue to perpetuate. So, universal law basically tells us that what you put up with, you end up with. What you tolerate, essentially you endorse. So as an example, if you tolerate people swearing and acting badly, you've given them a green light to continue. If you tolerate somebody being late and making excuses and you don't say anything about it, you essentially, once again, you have endorsed that behavior. So the only way to stop it is to sit back and say to yourself is, what is it that we need to stop endorsing? What behavior is no longer worth validating anymore? Because too many of us have allowed some of these negative conversations to come into the equation. And it really is as simple as that.
What, in your 100-day challenge, you talk about achieving your goals quickly, about being a competitor. It's sort of it's almost a tough love promotion for it. And there's a lot of that in it. But many of the lessons are very soft side sort of. You talk about humility and gratitude and serving other people, which when most people think of, crushing your goals or crushing the competition, those things don't come into play. Can you say a little bit more about that, the heart side of being a tough competitor?
Oh, without a doubt. My definition, and I don't get asked this question too frequently, but my definition of a goal is that it's a glorious celebration of all that's good and virtuous about the human condition. And I'm going to
say that again.
I will. It's a glorious celebration of all that is good and virtuous about the human condition. Now, let me unpack that. See, if you achieve a goal with honor, you have dealt with the truth, you have acted with integrity, you've demonstrated commitment, consistency, follow through, perseverance, grit, loyalty, and so on and so forth. You've demonstrated all the positive and beautiful aspects of what it means to be an abundant human being. And I think that's a wonderful way with which to be able to look at it. So we'll start there, and maybe you've got another question.
How does something like humility or a sense of gratitude foster that inner toughness you need to have to overcome your own inner barriers and move more quickly ahead to your goals?
Absolutely, no problem at all. Well, again, if you break it down, and we can only, I think Steve Jobs had made this quote, and you can only connect the dots going backwards. And that's really true. But I think if you were to take the time and look at somebody who's legitimately successful, you will not find somebody who's negative and nasty and mean to people and sarcastic and all that type of stuff. When you go back and you look at it and you look at this person's behavior pattern and so forth, and I mean legitimately successful, somebody you admire and say, I want to be like that person, you'll realize that they demonstrated a lot of virtues and a lot of behaviors, humility being one of them. Because it's impossible for you to be successful, to bring other people along, to build a team without demonstrating that. Because none of us are perfect. That's just part of the equation. But here's the thing about it. Very often in life, people are always looking for these hard skills, So I'll walk you through kind of this is an exercise from Dale Carnegie from maybe 35, 40 years ago. I'll never forget this. One of the instructors basically kind of talked about, think about anybody who who's successful and describe that person, put it down. Okay, simple enough. And then they went through and they basically said, is this a skill or an attitude? And this is the first time I ever really had that conversation where the light bulb went on. And you looked at it and like the people that are considered to be successful were nice human beings. So they were focused, they were family committed, they had demonstrated humility, but they also demonstrated discipline and focus and good judgment and everything along with it. And when we finally looked at it and saw how many A's were there in terms of attitudes and how many S's were there in terms of skills, it wasn't an 80-20, it was a 90-10 experience. That 90% of the attributes were soft skills. And we have a tendency of poo-pooing soft skills, especially in training and HR. I shouldn't say we do, a lot of people outside of it do. And they're like, that's just soft skills and whatever it is. But no, you got to understand the soft skills that's what separates everybody. And that's what makes it an organization truly unique. I mean, at the end of the day, any job, and I don't mean to negate whether it's in any industry whatsoever, but there's a certain number of repeatable tasks. If you're a phlebotomist, you're going to go in, you're going to put the band on, take this, take your blood. You know, there's a series of steps that are repeatable and actionable. And I get it, that it wouldn't take too long for anybody to pick those up just by watching you a half a dozen times. But the skill sets of having, especially in a medical facility, to have a great, presentation, if you will, people skills, bedside manner, it still blows me away that is still not really taught that much in school, in medical school. I don't know why, because that is worth millions. And you and I have seen videos of doctors dancing and, doing all types of stuff. And listen, my daughter's going to school to be a nurse, and they have her teaching a couple of classes because my daughter knows how to sing. She knows how to juggle. She knows how to do card tricks. And they're blown away when she goes in to meet with a family, and because she's just going through her internship right now, and they absolutely love her. And she's just doing little tricks with the kids. And it's like, that little thing alone does wonders. It really does. I always tell every dentist, anybody who's dealing with kids, learn how to juggle, learn a card trick or two, learn a coin trick or something like that. It's worth the time. It really is.
You mentioned Steve Jobs, and it's fascinating. Walter Isaacson's biography, Steve Jobs in the original Apple was arrogant. He was a bully. He tore people down. He was eventually fired from the company, which was on the verge of bankruptcy. 12 years later, they bring him back. He's still driven. He still has very high expectations, but he's got a sense of humility. He's got a sense of respect for other people. Instead of tearing people down, he tries to build them up, and he dies leaving Apple being the most valuable company on the planet. And it was he didn't learn new skills. He learned humility and gratitude and respect and things like that. We're going to wrap up in a couple minutes, and I do want to give you a chance to tell people about the 100-Day Challenge. It is something that I've been doing for at least 10 years now. I do it every year. So take a couple minutes and fill us in on the 100-Day Challenge.
Well, I think the first question it always gets, is it possible to transform your life or transform a business or transform a family in 100 days? And I said, let me give you a few examples and you decide. I said, we've all seen Dancing with the Stars. And you have a Hollywood, star or a singer or an athlete come on that hasn't danced before in their life. And in 14, 16 weeks, which is the length of the 100-Day Challenge or season on TV, you can't tell who's the pro and who's the amateur 14 weeks ago. So yeah, you can learn to become a professional dancer in 100 days. Look at, extreme home makeover. My house in Florida, I'm here in New York now, in Florida, that took a little over a year to build. It was a big build, and there was a lot of things to it. But if you take the time to look at extreme home makeover, they were building a move-in ready house in 7 days. So the question comes down to, can you build a house, move in 7 days? The answer is yes. It's been done. We've seen that. Military, and I give you an example of it, but let me give you one that's really important. You can't see, but off to the side we have a garden, and we've got about an acre set aside just for grow everything. And the beautiful part about this is I've learned how to become a farmer over the course of the last, when COVID started, that we decided we're going to grow our own food. Okay. So with that being said, we plant stuff in one season, and then the next season, we put a tiny little seed in the ground. And then the next and literally in 90 days, in 100 days, we've got, cucumbers and carrots and potatoes and watermelon that are abundant or huge. It is astonishing that from one season to the next, from sowing to reaping, which is again, just the 90-day period of time, you can feed your entire family. So yes, it is possible to lose weight, to improve your sales, to improve your team morale, to do anything. It's not easy. It's going to require hard, diligent work. The same way we've got to water those seeds every day and nurture them, but the same principle applies. So the 100-Day Challenge is based on the concept of you pick a very big, empowering goal, 1 to 3, no more than that, because you don't want to lose focus. And one that you are absolutely intensely committed to, and one that would be a transformative experience when it is achieved, not if, but when. You need to go into it with that mindset. And what I do is I provide you, as is a lesson plan, a challenge lesson, a structure and a format and deadlines. And some accountability that's built into it to help you get across the finish line. But I gotta tell you, the people who followed it over the years, and what I love most about it, here's what I love about what I do. And I know you want to wrap up, so I'll make this quick. Outside of people's children and their home or their marriage or whatever the case might be, I get to play with people's hopes and dreams. I get to deal with the invisible and turn it into the possible, and to show people that you can do extraordinary things in a very short period of time. And to be part of that with people's lives is probably I didn't go into it with that idea because it didn't really register with me. That's what I was doing. But I can honestly say there's something truly joyful about that. And anyway, that's part of my mojo, I suppose.
Well, you've had 600,000 plus people go through the 100-day challenge. Millions of people have read your books. So clearly you've touched a lot of people.
You're kind, man.
And I'm one of them, and I know many others. So Gary, as always, it's been a delight. I'll look forward to seeing you hopefully in the future, now that we can travel and do such things again, hopefully in the near future.
So I'll tell you what. I'm going to do something for your folks. I haven't even told you this. Anybody who signs up, I'll do a buy one, get one. So if anybody who signs up using, your codes and you send them through your link, we'll give them a free membership to give to a friend or family member. That way you'll go in, you'll have an additional level of accountability. So I toss that in as a bonus to you guys.
Okay, well, I appreciate it. And as you know, we get a small commission, which we donate all of it to your favorite charity, the Wounded Warrior Project, which is so very important. So thank you for what you do for that. And we will we'll reconvene this in one quarter, because I have a call with you every quarter. So at the beginning of Q4, we'll ask people, how have you done in the last quarter, the last 3 months? And are you on track for where you need to be at the end of the year?
Joseph, you got it, baby.
Thank you. Thank you, Gary. And thank you all of you who joined the call. We will send a follow-up email with a couple of links and a couple of follow-up resources. If you didn't already download Gary's guide for the Q3, the third quarter, I will send you another link to that. It's an outstanding, very motivating and insightful document, as is everything Gary does. So Gary, thank you. And I'll see you in 3 months, but hopefully sooner than that.
Joseph, love you.
And goodbye, everybody. See ya.